Hey everyone, Ryan Ventura here. Thank you for tuning in to this very first episode of the Chama Lama Ding Dong podcast. Before we dive right in, I want to share a quick note. When recording this episode with my co-host Aaron Stewart, I should have triple checked instead of just double checking to make sure that my microphone was working properly with Google Meet. While it technically was, I later realized that the audio was being recorded through my webcam instead of my microphone. My apologies for the oversight. These first few episodes are about getting our feet wet, and I'll make sure to do more than double check my setup for future episodes. Thank you for your understanding, and I hope you enjoyed the very first episode of the Chama Lama Ding Dong podcast.
You are now about to witness the strength of
Chama
Lama
Ding Dong!
Two friends with a passion for combat sports. One's an actor, the other's a ring announcer. Together, we bring to you the CLDD podcast. Hello, everyone. My name is Ryan Ventura. I'm with my co-host Aaron Stewart. It's so good to finally have you on the broadcast, man.
Hey man, this is we've been talking about this for a little while, so it's finally, sometimes and pardon my French, sometimes you just gotta fuck around and find out, see what happens,
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, so for everyone that's just tuning in, Aaron and I have been longtime friends. I don't know how long we've known each other for now. Has it been like?
Jeez.
I think I met you in 2017.
That checks out. Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah.
So about 8 years. We know each other through some mutual friends, and we've been buddies since. Ever since, like, I don't know. I think we've always been talking about fights.
Yeah, I think we first kind of got in with the live music scene, and then I think we follow each other on what was formerly known as Twitter, and then I would just make some stupid comments about fights and stuff, and then you started commenting, and then I guess we just started just bouncing ideas off each other for a while. So it's kind of like a long time coming, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for myself, I've hosted MMA podcasts in the past. Back in the late 2000s, I used to host a show with a good friend of mine based out in New York. We had the Knockout MMA Radio, which was actually really cool because we had some really cool interviews from back in the day. Like we actually had an interview with John Anik. So this was when...
That's awesome.
So that was when John Anik was still, I think he was the color guy for Bellator at the time. And, over the years,
was he at WEC? I feel like I remember him being at WEC for a while. Maybe I'm wrong.
Anik, I don't think worked for WEC at that time. It was Kenny Florian and
right.
Stephen Bonner that worked in the WEC.
Right, of course.
Yeah,
man. It's interesting to see just how the sport has changed and evolved. I mean, because I used to watch, I also first got into watching MMA through the Ultimate Fighter, and then
was it the first Ultimate Fighter?
No, I don't know what season it was. I think it was maybe season 6 or 7, because I remember in high school when season 10. The Rampage Rashad season of Kimbo and the heavyweight season. That was
that was a good one.
Everyone was watching it. Every single week, everyone was talking about it. I think it was it aired on Tuesdays or something. Every Wednesday, people were talking about it. So that's when I think I really started getting into it, but I'm not too sure now that I think about it. But hey, time flies, I guess.
Yeah, it does. I mean, for myself, I've been a lifelong fan of combat sports. It goes pretty much for as long as I can remember. I've enjoyed combat sports. My grandfather, rest in peace, he was a massive fight fan. He loved to watch boxing, and it all especially being a Filipino. Combat sports is very much a part of our culture. So anything martial arts related, I've always had an interest to it. I actually watched the very first UFC. So not as it was happening live, but I watched it the year that it happened because back in the day, my family friends, they used to have something called a black box. So basically, basically it was it was an illegal cable box that you would obtain, and you're able to get all the channels. And my family friend actually had a VHS recording of UFC 1,
That's
And
wild.
I was only 7 years old when I first saw that, and I was already like a big martial arts fan. I loved the Van Damme movies and Bruce Lee movies, and of course watching boxing and playing Street Fighter growing up,
Yeah.
and seeing like this no holds barred style of fighting, on tape was very intriguing to me and was very interesting to me, and it's been something that I've kept up with all these years. Like I remember back in the day at Rogers Video and at Blockbuster Video, that same family friend of mine used to rent the original UFCs and Pride and K1. It was pretty crazy, man.
Yeah. It's just like, it's so interesting because like, obviously coming from a certain background, like I didn't have any of that really. Like I was born in the UK, so my family was very much, especially my dad, was especially focused on watching, like football, and so there wasn't like a huge exposure, so to speak, to combat sports. And like I said, like I think it was just something that the sport was growing at such a rapid pace. It's such a young, like when I was in high school, so it was just like, and when trends catch on, or not trends, but when something gets popular, it's like everyone's talking about it, and since then it just, like I said before, it's insane how much the sport has, I mean, not in a negative way, but it's been incredibly more mainstream than I think anyone ever anticipated.
Do you think?
But
Do you think, like, especially during the pandemic times, that it really,
oh,
like,
huge.
it skyrocketed the sport to like even greater heights? Like you thought that,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah. Because I think that, well, at the time, like you couldn't watch anything. And, like I think we all have our opinions on how things were supposed to open up and things during the pandemic. And I know that was a very strange time that we were experiencing, but the fact that the UFC was able to continue putting on fights during a time where there was like no broadcasted sports, I think that did them a huge favor. Like it absolutely increased their popularity by, I mean, I don't know, I don't have the numbers in front of me, nor do I know, but like it absolutely exploded the sport. It made so many new fans, and you would think that if anything, the pandemic would have been a huge detriment to the brand, but it only made it stronger, which is
yeah.
incredible.
And if anything too, the craziest part about all of this, because at one time, even during the days when you were watching the Ultimate Fighter, this was still a very like niche sport, like a fringe sport,
Absolutely.
right? Like people like very much look down upon this sport.
Oh well, yeah, and like not to disparage any of the networks, but I mean, I remember watching Spike TV, and Spike TV had some interesting programs like what's it,
The
like a
Man
thousand
Show,
way
no,
man show,
yeah, those shows.
thousand ways to
I
die.
love that show.
Uh, I really enjoyed what I thought was really cool was Deadliest Warrior.
I
Remember
love
that
Deadliest
one?
Warrior. That was a great show. They need
So
to bring
like
that back.
that would be sweet if they did it now.
Yeah,
And it's just like they definitely had like a fringe niche target audience, albeit more of a male centered audience. I would
yeah,
I would suggest, but I think they at the time they just needed to get play wherever they could, and you've got like a network like Spike that just I guess took a shot in the dark, and because of that Stephen Bonner and Forrest Griffin finale in the first season, like I mean, if that fight had never happened, like we might not even be talking about the fight card that's happening this weekend. Like you
that's
never
so
know.
true.
It,
And
it,
like,
it could have
yeah,
it could have crumbled right then and there. So that's really interesting.
who knows where, honestly, who knows where combat sports would be like if it wasn't for like the way that UFC has helped not just grown the sport of MMA, but I think combat sports as a whole. Because like if you look at like especially during the pandemic times, the UFC actually set the standard for how sports in general were broadcast during the pandemic,
Absolutely.
and like
Absolutely.
they help set trends. And yeah, it's been crazy, but like we're looking forward to the present. We
Mhm.
have a big card coming up this weekend, this
Yeah.
Saturday. As of this recording, UFC 311, Makachev versus I can never Sarkurian. I can never pronounce
So,
his last name.
oh, what you're gonna pull a Chael Sonnen, and
Yeah, yeah,
I believe, and if anyone wants to correct me, it's a Sarukian.
There you go, Sarukian.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, the
UFC. That's gonna be a big card.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's at the Intuit Dome in Los Angeles, and the card was actually under. There's a chance that they had to move it to Las Vegas due to the fires in Los Angeles. So it appeared that everything's going on as scheduled. So that's good.
Yeah.
Anyone in LA that's suffering from the fires, we support you. We hope that everything's safe and everyone's good. But I guess business as usual. They're going to carry on, and I believe it's like a really state of the art new facility where the LA Clippers
Yeah.
are that like their home court. So I've heard nothing but like incredible things about the venue. So it's the first time that they're in this venue, and yeah, it looks like a state of the art spot. So should be a really exciting room or arena to be putting on such a really a really massive card to start off the year, which is fantastic.
Well, it's a pretty stacked card. There's like pretty much like I would say, like for sure, the Dariush versus Moicano fight that could 100% headline a fight night.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
Prohaska and Hill that's like too good of a fight to even be like placed where it is. Like that could even be a co-main. But then we have the Valish Willie versus Umar Nomagomedov. Right,
Yeah.
that's for the co-main for the bantamweight title. That's going to be an excellent fight. These guys have been chirping back and forth for a while too.
Oh yeah, man, and it's just like, especially bantamweight has been such like a sleeper division. Not only when you have like guys like O'Malley, you've got like Piotr Jan, Corey Sandhagen. I mean, like that. Outside of the lightweight division, I think the bantamweight is like the most exciting, the most deep, and like really anyone in like the top. Honestly, anyone in the top 10 could probably have a shot at the title, which is like what makes the sport so exciting, because like it's really up to anybody.
Yeah. Right now, I'm just pulling up the UFC rankings for everyone to see on the screen.
Yeah.
For everyone out there, if you're tuning into the video version, please bear with me because we're still learning how to put all of this together. But I'm looking at the top 10 rankings, the official rankings on UFC.com. So obviously the Valish Willie, the bantamweight champion, he's number one. O'Malley, he's probably going to be he's on a hiatus right now, isn't he?
I believe so. I think that there was talk before Umar got the call. I think that they were looking at running it back as a rematch. But I honestly think that like O'Malley could fight anyone in the top 5, and it would be like an incredible fight for him stylistically as well.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that if anything, they're probably going to slide him in with Piotr Jan as a rematch because of that being a little bit of a controversial decision when they fought in Abu Dhabi a few years ago, right before Sean O'Malley. I think he was like ranked 9 and then beat Piotr Jan and then shot up and got the title shot against Aljo. So, I mean, I think that there's some unfinished business there. I think that would be a good matchup, but also like I think him versus Corey Sandhagen would be an incredible fight. I think him versus Figueiredo would be great. Yeah, like I said, like this, the bantamweight division is super exciting, and there's just so many great potential matchups for just about anybody in that top 10, top 15.
Well, I mean, like, it would be kind of redundant to go through every fight on this card, just because, like, of course, there's a lot of other shows out there that are going through the whole card and trying to scientifically break down everything. But you and I we're not experts.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
I'm not a world-class fighter or coach, and we're just fans and everything like that.
Yeah.
Out of all the fights that are in this card, what stands out most to you? Like the one fight, if you had to pick one.
Wow. I really do think that Beneil Dariush and Renan Moicano fight is just like one of those potential like people's main event kind of things, because like Moicano's just been on such a rise lately, and I wouldn't say he's like the most improved fighter of 2024, but he just seems to have had like just kind of this refiguring of his skill set and his brand, and he's super funny, he's super entertaining, he's outspoken. Like that whole thing that he said after he beat what's his name? Sorry, who did he fight in France recently?
Benoit Saint-Denis.
Thank you very much, BST, and like he's going off and talking about their prime minister. He's talking about like the taxes in France, and like he's just so outspoken. And I think that like while I'm not entirely like big on like the talk your way to the top, but he is backing it up. And Dariush has been like a long-standing guy in the division, and
Yeah.
he took a hard loss to both Sarukian as well as Charles Oliveira. So maybe this is his opportunity to bounce back. We don't know. Maybe this is Moicano's opportunity if he wins here. Like I could see him fighting someone in the top 5, getting a title shot. But I do think if you're looking at any of the fights on this card, that is definitely one of the ones I'm most excited to see, because like it's unpredictable. It's super unpredictable.
And they're both. You know what's crazy though? Like, look at it. So I'm looking at the Topology page right now. Dariush is ranked number 9th. Moicano is number 7. Um, like, well, actually, according to the official UFC rankings, though, Dariush is number 9, and Moicano is number 10.
Right.
Yeah, he's number 10. Um, Lightweight has always been a murderer's row for as long as I can remember. Like, even during the BJ Penn, Frankie Edgar days, it's always been a tough guys division.
Oh man, like again, coming back to like even like when like the same things I said about bantamweight is like you look at anyone in here in the top, honestly, anyone in the top 15, like it's all interchangeable. And once it says Moicano's number 10, Beneil's number 9. It's like it's actually absurd how strong this division has been, and how like the top 5 have been like unshakable for such a long period of time. I believe, I don't know, I think Justin Gaethje's supposed to be fighting Dan Hooker, which I think is a great match.
Holy, that's gonna be violence.
Yeah, and man, and talk about guys that have like kind of reinvented themselves. Look at Dan Hooker, like got all those tattoos, bleach blonde hair, and I mean that guy is just like I would love to meet that guy, because he's in the best way possible. I think that Dan Hooker is a psychopath, but in like the best possible way. Like terrifying, but also looks like you could really have a beer with him and have a good time. But he is just, like he's what was it, like in between rounds with that Mateus Gamrot fight, he's like laughing, he's like bleeding out of his out of his head, and he's laughing, saying how much he enjoys it. Like he's and as we said before, like we're just fans. I train a little bit of boxing here and there. I'm not like by no means am I an expert in jiu-jitsu or any kind of thing like that. And I tell you, these guys are built different. There's a certain type of people out there that do this for a living, and I don't have that in me. I like to watch it. I like to talk about it, but yeah, I don't know if I could. I have any respect for anyone who gets into the ring. It's crazy.
I mean, like for myself, like I've been doing particularly Muay Thai and kickboxing since I was 8 years old, and I'm 37 now. So it's been a long while of me training, and like I actually do train at a high level, and I've sparred with pro fighters and very high level guys, and being in the same room as these guys, training with them, working out with them. And like I myself have had like low level tournaments and competitions in striking. I do sort of get it, but at the same time, like hanging out with these kind of people, getting to know them, you really 100% are built differently, because especially when you're not quite at the UFC level, and even at the lowest level of the UFC, you have to genuinely want to do this.
Yeah.
Right? Just because the reward versus the risk is just way too high. Obviously at the high level, the champions and everything like that, they get paid very well. I mean, maybe they could get paid better, but they get paid very well. But at the lowest level, there's a lot of guys out there that I know that are high level fighters, but they work regular jobs, they're regular people. Yeah. Right? And there's a lot of risk and damage. But go on, sorry.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's just like, and competitive sports in a nutshell is just like such a, to be an elite level athlete in any sport is like, you really gotta eat, sleep, breathe. Like that's it, and,
yep.
It's this is pretty obvious, but it's just like it's a lifestyle that I think that a lot of us who quote unquote come from more privileged backgrounds or something, not to say that every fighter has to go through turmoil and struggles, but like, a lot of the guys who are at the top right now a lot of guys who grew up in, like the tough streets of Brazil, or, you look at someone like Islam Makhachev, who, like, up until not too long ago, these guys, we didn't know where Dagestan was. We didn't know this kind of camp of guys, but it's a very remote area of Russia. And it's like these guys don't live, like pampered lifestyles. Right. So it's like these guys are really are cut from a different cloth. And the fact that they can rise up in these opportunities to showcase their skills, and with the growing popularity of the sport, giving them a platform, because you've got guys, if you're watching like the Australian Open right now, or you're watching the English Premier League, it's like those are such mainstream competitions and sports that like those people get a platform. But seeing guys from Marab from Georgia, and a variety of guys on this fight card that are just from different areas of the world, it's such a global sport, which is super exciting as well.
Yeah, it's really cool. And speaking of a global sport, we have this is my fight to check out, like on the card. It's actually Netherlands versus USA. We got a former one championship middleweight champion Reiner de Ritter taking on the striking sensation, the loudmouth Kevin Holland. That's the fight that I like personally for myself. When I watch MMA, I kind of like throwback matches where it's style versus style, and this is very much a perfect example of style versus style. So, just to give you guys a little bit of context, many of you know that the Netherlands, is home of some of the best striking in the world. Where a guy like Reiner de Ritter, like he may come from that place, but he's a very, 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 very high level grappler. Very high level grappler.
Yeah.
So like kind of different from the typical Dutch fighter. I mean, you have like guys like Alistair Overeem, who was of course a world class kickboxer, but he had very underappreciated grappling too. And Reiner de Ritter, he's part of that same Dutch cloth of legendary fighters that come out of that great country. And he had a great showing in his first UFC appearance. Pretty
Yeah,
solid.
yeah, I think, but he fought like Gerald Mearshart, and he just got him with like an arm triangle, I think. And he's such like a like, unconventional guy, because like you said, you expect a lot of these Dutch kickboxers to really go in with a striking background, but he's a great grappler. And he puts himself in a lot of difficult positions, but somehow people haven't really sussed him out. He's a really great addition to the roster, and like really spices up the middleweight division.
Yeah.
And then on the flip side, you've got like Kevin Holland, who he may not win every fight, he may not be technically the most sound guy, but he is one of the most entertaining guys on the roster. And I think that like at this point in time, I'm just like, win or lose, I'll watch a Kevin Holland fight regardless.
Me too.
He's
He's a little bit crazy. I like it.
yeah, and he's just like, he's kind of in that like, I wouldn't say he's like a mega star or superstar or anything like that, but he's definitely just got that like that energy where like, yeah, win or lose, I'm gonna watch him. He's gonna put on a good fight. It's gonna be exciting, and like it'd be an interesting matchup. I'm curious to see how that turns out, because he has a crazy good Darce choke.
Underappreciated.
Underappreciated, despite being not like a huge, like not a big wrestler or like a proficient grappler, so to speak. But he's got those really long arms. He's got that really long reach. He picks people apart with that jab. So, that's a good shout on your fight to pick, because it's a pick me on that one for sure.
Yeah, for sure. It's easily a 50-50 fight, because obviously if let's call him RDR because it's a lot easier.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so for RDR, like obviously what the game plan is with him. He wants to take this to the ground, and he wants to work his very strong submission game. And obviously Kevin Holland will want to keep it on the feet and try to KO a very high level guy. Having a champion from like another promotion, like having a victory over them means something. It really does.
Absolutely.
And both of these guys, they're currently unranked in the UFC rankings officially. So like they're easily fighting for a top 15 spot right now. So like right now number 15 is Michel Pereira, and number 14 Shera Magomedov, and number 13 is Jack Hermanson. So easily, I think the winner of this fight is knocking on the door of top 15.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think right now, I think like we're kind of like entering a new era, so to speak, with like a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the divisions. Like like coming back from it, like you said, we had like our BJ Penn era, our GSP era, and like our Anderson Silvas, but now it's like, and then as as the sport has evolved, and you see like new stars come up and new champions, it's like I think right now like that kind of thing is kind of in flux right now. I think some new guys are making their names, and yeah, like you said, like this is a perfect opportunity for one of these guys to crack into the top 15, and like I think just spices up the in this case the middleweight division, but like divisions all across the promotion, and yeah, I think that like anything can happen. I think that like yeah, I mean like just looking at just looking at the main card in particular, because like you had the Yuri Prohaska and the Jamal Hill fight, which prior to Yuri, when he had the belt, dislocating and damaging his shoulder, I believe, like these guys were supposed to fight each other.
Yep.
They were slated to fight. They were wait. So wait, let me correct me. If so, Yuri had the title, he had to vacate it,
Mm-hmm.
and then he Jamal won the belt from Glover, and then yes, and then Jamal was supposed to fight Yuri, and then Jamal got injured.
Yeah,
Correct?
that's
Yes,
correct.
yes, yes. Right,
And
right, right, right.
yeah, that's what happened. And then like of course, when he came back from that injury, were we watching that fight together?
Were we? I don't know. I don't think so, but yeah, Jamal he's a character for sure in this sport. I think anyone who follows the sport knows that he's and I can understand that coming back and fighting Poatan at UFC 300, and the low blow thing, and he waves him off and then he knocks him out, and like you can break that thing down to the minutia like into split seconds, but I think what Jamal needs to do, and again, I am just an armchair I'm an armchair expert in this regard,
Yeah.
is that Jamal likes to talk, and I think it's a good marketing strategy. People want to see him fight, whether they want to see him win, whether they want to see him lose. That's kind of irrelevant at this point. But I think Jamal just needs to kind of put his foot down and win this fight, and then
Yeah. He
because
has to.
he has to, because I definitely see Jamal, if he were to win this fight, he can definitely get a rematch with Pereira probably sometime this year, given that we don't know what's going on with the Ankalaev Poatan back and forth. So and I think that on paper the like a Poatan versus Jamal Hill 2 fight would sell bigger than that against Ankalaev. So I
Yeah.
think just
Yeah.
what Jamal needs to do is just show up, get the job done, and then work his way back into a title shot. I think he might need another win after this. Yuri, having 2 losses, and I like to see where he goes after this, because the light heavyweight's a little not too sure what's going on in terms of the top 5, but while Poetan's at the top, it's really hard to hard to see like where some of these guys can go. But yeah, I think if Jamal Hill wins this and then maybe sets himself up with another, because he was supposed to fight Khalil Roundtree at 302, and then that thing turned into a variety of fights, which was absurd. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's an interesting fight, because both guys are really hard hitting. Yuri's just like the modern day samurai, and Jamal Hill is just like, I remember watching that fight against Glover in Brazil, and it was like
Yeah. That was crazy, man.
I it was actually probably one of my favorite fights that year, because it was just like Glover took just one hell of a beating in that fight, and it was crazy. Uh, yeah, I just think like maybe Jamal could take his foot off the uh, I don't even know what to say, but like he talks a lot. He talks a lot, and I think maybe maybe let the fighting speak for itself.
Yeah, that is true. But you know how the American, the Western fans, I should say, the Western fans, they love a talker. right? Even
Oh,
even if like he isn't like the most he's not the most eloquent with his words, right? He's not like you know, the sharpest talker. People love talkers, and people love fighters that are engaging with fans on social
oh, absolutely.
media. And you know, maybe it's you know, there are some things where I read some of the things that he would tweet and watch some of the videos that he would make, and I'm just like, okay, I don't know about that, but I mean, like, at least you got people talking,
Well,
right?
and I think that that's a part of the new era of the sport. Like a meritocracy isn't as isn't like the defining factor of like who is the next guy in line, who is the number one contender. But yeah, I think like making content is important. A lot of these guys have podcasts. A lot of these guys are active on social media, which I mean I think is important. Using that tool to promote your brand, promote your platform. I mean that interaction that he had with Poetan at the PI, and like Poetan throws the gloves at him. I think because Poetan's just like he's just this stoic guy
Yeah,
that has knocked out Jamal Hill. He has that over him. He's doing a speed run of like potentially one of the greatest of all times, and I think that he's pretty seldom to show much emotion. I think he's in his late 30s, so he's like been in the game for a really long time, being a double champ in Glory Kickboxing, and it's like I think that when he sees these guys trying to make a gotcha moment, if you will, kind of like a TMZ kind of energy, I think he's just like, okay, well, just like put your money where your mouth is, and we'll spar, and then all that stuff happened. And I don't need to get into like the the finer details of that whole thing, but I don't, I think it was like a pretty standard Jamal Hill loss in that situation.
yeah, for sure, for sure. I think back to what, in my opinion, what really put Yuri Prohaska on the map. Like, I mean, you know, he was he was a great champion in the Ryzen promotion out in Japan, wonderful promotion. But that elbow that he landed on Dominic Reyes back
Oh,
on
oh,
May 1st, 2021. That was still during the pandemic times. The fight
yeah,
that
that was
pretty much
nuts.
landed him the title shot, that still lives
Mhm.
rent free in my mind. Like, that was one of
Oh
the most
man,
violent elbows ever seen in the sport.
that was crazy, and I didn't even know who he was at that time. Like some of these guys come from different promotions. Like you said, like from Ryzen. There's so many different guys that like I'm not familiar with. But when he showed up on the scene, he had like the samurai
Yeah,
ponytail thing. I'm
the top knot.
Top knot. Thank you. Yeah, I'm sure there's a much more culturally appropriate way of saying that. So I apologize, but yeah, like I don't know. I'm probably like it's not a man bun. I'll tell you that
No,
much.
it's most definitely not.
But I just like who is this guy? And like oh, that's weird. Like I think my dad and I were watching it, and we're just like, who's this guy? What's that thing on his head? And then he got that spinning back. Well, it was a spinning elbow, wasn't it? And it's just
Yeah,
like
it was. Whoa, like that just
sent him into the shadow realm. It was
that was like
ridiculous.
something out of like Tekken or the UFC video games.
Yeah, yeah. Like, yeah, that's literally like something that you would knock someone out with on the video game, and you'd be like, that would never happen in real life.
And he did it.
And he did it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man.
But the crazy
Yeah.
thing is, like, I'm just like looking at the topology for Yuri. So right after that fight, like that Dominic Reyes fight, he was originally supposed to fight Glover Teixeira on May 7th, 2002, and that unfortunately had to get postponed. But he ended up, of course, like fighting Glover later on June 11th, 2022, won the light heavyweight championship, and then
Right.
of course Alex Pereira a year after, got revenge, right?
Mm.
Yeah, he got the revenge for Glover, and then eventually, we have that title fight that happened last year. But the
Yeah.
thing about like Yuri though is, he hasn't, unfortunately, due to his injuries, he hasn't been, as active as other people would like. Essentially, he's averaging one fight a year.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, like he did a very quick turnaround with being at 300 and taking on Alexander Rakic, and then the really bizarre thing about the light heavyweight division is that it's kind of like whoever's ready to go is up basically. So yeah, there's only like, and then obviously Pereira and Yuri saved 303 after the whole McGregor Chandler injury. So that happened. So I think that like both these, I mean, all three of these guys, I'm including Pereira in this conversation, but these guys are all gamers. They want to fight, and maybe Hill shouldn't have come back so soon after that Achilles injury, but he's back now. He only fought last in June, so
Yeah.
wait, no, I'm wrong there. Sorry, he only fought back in April.
Yeah, April.
I think this is like a really interesting fight that could again go either way. I don't know. I just think that like Yuri is such an unorthodox style as well. He leaves his chin open. He swings for the fences, like quite literally. Really don't know what to make of this fight. It could go either way. It could be a ho hum decision for all I know. But I think that these guys are both going to be coming in to try to finish the fight early for sure.
Oh, 100%. So we got ourselves another 50-50 fight, eh?
Honestly, yeah, I would say majority of this main card is really up in the air.
Yeah, like for sure. Like because I'm looking at the topology once again. Like obviously the main event between Islam and I can't pronounce his last name. I feel bad. Sarukian.
Sarukian.
Yeah. Sarukian. So the second fight between them, like that could go either way. Like it's not as easy as people would think to predict that one. And same thing with Devalish Willie and Devalish Vili and Nurmagomedov. Oh my gosh, man, I'm a horrible announcer.
Well, hey, like I always I have so much respect for Bruce Buffer when they do the fights in Abu Dhabi or Saudi Arabia, because obviously they stack those cards with more or less local talent, so to speak. And man, there are some names in there that I would hate to butcher on live television. But
man. Like, for myself, like in order to like not butcher names, like for my cards when I do my announcing, I spell everything phonetically on my cards so that it's easy for me to pronounce. But obviously, like we're just shooting the breeze right now, having a conversation.
Oh no, totally
on the spot. It's like I can't spell that phonetically fast enough,
Yeah. What do you think of the co-main event with Merab and Umar? Like, what do you think?
Man,
how do you think that's gonna go?
My thing is like I always kind of give something called the champion's bias. So I always give a little bit of an edge to the champion. But when you look at Umar Nurmagomedov, when you look at his record, he's 18-0. Obviously, he has a very legendary last name attached to his name. He's part of that legendary family. And you look at his resume. He has like his last win to get the title shot was against Sanhagen. A lot. To be honest with you, a lot of the names on his resume, like I don't even really know that well personally. Like there's Ronnie Barcelos. He's a good fighter, but like I'm not super familiar with him. Like I think like his biggest name win is against Corey Sanhagen.
Absolutely, and I think that there has been a little bit of, at least from what I'm told, what I believe is that the Merab side wasn't sure that he deserved a shot. I think they're saying that maybe Umar is getting some preferential treatment based on the last name, based on the legacy. But honestly, I mean, to go 18-0 in this sport, let alone in anything, what he's like working with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, a six fight win streak in
the UFC
in the UFC alone. I mean, while I'll agree with you, I don't know a lot of the guys that he's fought through these different promotions, but at the same time, like to string together 18 straight wins in your career with no losses is an insane feat. So
that's no easy task, and I can't speak this is a fact. Like I'm pretty sure, like he's not getting like easy fights. I feel like a guy like Anyone that's a Nurmagomedov, I don't think any of those guys take easy fights. They're not picky and choosy about their match selection. They'll take anybody.
Oh no, yeah. I listened to Demetrius Johnson's podcast, the Mighty Cast, and he had Islam Makhachev on there, and so like it doesn't matter, just whoever's next. Like put the guy in front of me, and I'll fight him. It's all like strength of schedule and like who's available and yada yada yada. But I think that like these two fights at the top of this card do feel like genuine number one contender fights, which like we said, we don't often kind of get that as often as we used to because you had Sean O'Malley fighting Chito Vera, you had Khalil Rountree fighting Pereira, you had Stipe Miocic fighting John Jones. So it's just like when there's a clear number one contender there, you think to yourself like, well, that's the fight that should happen, but rarely does that happen. Sometimes it's harder to market these fights, but it's really cool because you're going to see two guys that are, especially with Merab and Umar. Like, I think that if Umar can stop the pace of Merab and can negate that style of wrestling, that relentless pace that Merab is, they call him the machine for a reason. He just keeps going. I think he attempted 48 takedown attempts on Petr Yan. And like that is insane. And he just does not get tired. So if Umar can negate that and, expose some of the holes in Merab's striking game, there's a chance, I think, maybe that, like you said, you have the champion's bias, but I mean, I'm never going to count on anyone from the Nurmagomedov camp because those guys are truly built different.
Yep.
It's like I think I read somewhere a while ago that when they're growing up and they're doing their combat sambo and something, like it's almost expected in their culture that they become champions.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that they're as dominant as they are is kind of just like, yeah, that's kind of how we do things around here.
Yeah,
which
pretty
is
much. It's just like expected.
Yeah,
it's expected.
And it is big shoes to fill. Having Khabib in your corner is already like a huge feather in your cap to have that kind of knowledge, that kind of cerebral quality of how the fight game works. Again, I would say I assume that this fight will probably go to a decision, but a lot of the bantamweight guys, they're not all like knockout artists, but I'm interested to see kind of like that like battle of attrition, that tug of war between the two of them, and it really just depends on kind of who breaks who first, because I know that both Umar and Merab have incredible heart and incredible cardio, so really it's just who can push the pace and keep that pace the longest.
Yeah, I don't think any of these guys will break. It's gonna be, like you said, it's gonna be a war of attrition, and like I almost feel like this could be one of those fights where each other's wrestling negates the wrestling. So essentially, this could be a kickboxing match.
Mm-hmm. It very, very well could be, and that could be super exciting.
Yeah,
and and as we know, it takes one shot to drop somebody. So yeah, no, I think that's a good call out on that one because they say styles make fights, but when there's two dominant grapplers going head to head on each other, like the chances are that they negate that grappling and then just start slugging it out. I mean, it could be a really messy fight. It could be a pretty lopsided fight IQ kind of showdown, but I'm excited. It's not usually, I think, on paper like it. I think people are kind of counting out how exciting this fight could actually be.
Yeah, I think so. I think so too. Looking back at Merab's resume, so I'm looking at his Tapology once again. Man, like it's quite an impressive resume, I must say. Like let's go all the way to all right. So it looks like in his first UFC fight he lost to Frankie Saenz. I don't know who Frankie is. I know who Ricky Simone is. He lost to Ricky Simone. Ricky Simone's a good fighter, and then like he just went on a tear. He beat Tyrion Ware, Canadian Brad Katona. But like if you go further up in the card, I think like his first big win was against John Dodson, who at one
Yeah.
time was a flyweight contender, good fighter.
Oh yeah.
He beat Cody Stamen, and then I think this is his biggest one before he became a champion. Marlon
Mm.
Moraes, he got a ground and pound victory back in 2021. Then he beat the legendary Jose Aldo, but that was like when Aldo, you could kind of say, was kind of in the
Yeah.
twilight of his career, right?
Yeah, he was. It's amazing with someone like Aldo, who was such a dominant featherweight, and he was able to drop down to bantamweight and still, at his age, continue to be a potential title challenger for the bantamweight belt as well. But then, like you said, you look at someone like he fights Marlon Moraes, he beats him. He beats Jose Aldo. He beats Piotr Jan. He beats Henry Cejudo. He beats Sean O'Malley. Like compared to like you look at Umar's resume and you're like, oh, I don't really know many guys on his resume, but like the last 5 fights that Merab has fought, these are guys that are like either previous champions, Olympic champions, legends of the sport. Before Piotr Jan hit Aljo with that illegal knee, like I thought Piotr Jan was untouchable.
Yeah, me too.
Like,
Me too. That was probably like one of the biggest fumbles in MMA history when Peter Yan just like looks at his coach. He just throws the illegal knee.
no man, and it makes you wonder like what would hit like would he still be champ now? You don't know. It's and then like you got Cejudo coming back, and you've got like and then Sean O'Malley, like while he's a laser point striker, still like the fact that he climbed up the ranks the way that he did. But I think it was just like the Merab's relentless pace just like overwhelmed him at the Sphere, and it wasn't the most exciting fight. I'll be the first to admit that. I think everyone can agree, but a win against Sean O'Malley is a win against Sean O'Malley. So
Yeah, exactly. And at the end of the day, the most important thing that people think about is your record and that W,
yeah.
right? That's obviously like MMA is like an interesting sport where like the record isn't always everything. The record like doesn't necessarily always reflect on the rankings, but like at the end of the day, like that number like associated with the W is very important, and he got the job done that night.
Yeah, I really do appreciate how like the MMA fans as well, like especially, and we'll talk about this a little bit later when you talk about professional boxing, is that like all these guys are like 30-0, 28-0, 45-0 kind of thing, and it's like not only it's maybe their earlier days of their records are padded, but like that one loss on your resume felt like a death sentence for a lot of people in boxing, and I think that with MMA, it's like it just goes to show that it's like anything can happen on any night. And you can even say that about the main event. Like Arman and Islam fought each other. I rewatched their fight last night, and that was like probably the most high-level grappling I've seen in a fight in a long, long time. And those guys were, God, how long ago was that? Let me just quickly double check.
Let's see.
He fought Islam in 2019. It was his first fight in the UFC. He came in on short notice. Could you imagine? Just like, oh, hey, it's my first fight in the UFC, because they're in St. Petersburg. They're in Russia at the time. So more or less, I think that Arman came in as like kind of like one of the local guys, and he gets thrown in against Islam, and we didn't really know who Islam was at the time either.
Yeah.
But and if you think about it, like 4.5 years ago, like these guys are completely different fighters now.
Yeah.
I think that like if you look at it, I do believe that Islam won that fight 30-27 pretty clearly, but like the exchanges were just like relentless. It was like such a tough fight for both of those guys, and man, like you could just see the look in Arman's face at the end. He was just exhausted, and I think that he's only matured, he's only gotten stronger, he's only developed a more rounded skill set since then. And again, first like this being his, like he's a number one contender. He beat Charles Oliveira in a very, very close fight, but again, a win against Charles Oliveira puts you right at the top. Mm-hmm. And then he knocked out Beneil Dariush in like a minute and 5 seconds. And at a time where if had Beneil won that fight, he probably would have got a title shot. So it's like these guys have only matured and grown and developed their skill sets even more so. So I think that you're looking at like the second coming of Khabib with Islam, but these two guys are like really, really dominant guys in their division, and it's like new flavor, especially Armin being like kind of the new flavor in the lightweight division, because you've always had your Poiriers, your Gaethjes, you've had your Oliveras, Max Holloway, you've had all those guys in the mix for such a long time, and it's really cool to see some, wouldn't say like new blood, because like I said, he's been around since 2019 in the sport, but it's really interesting to see a guy like him getting a title shot.
Yeah, and it's a well-deserved title shot. It's
absolutely,
again, it's another 50-50 fight. Also, big props to you for like segueing into that from the co-main to the main. Like you did it very effortlessly.
Oh, cheers. Thank you.
Well done. Well, we've pretty much like talked a lot about like the main card. Let's I guess like it's a safe thing. Like let's just go through some picks. Let's go to okay. So like the big prospect right now is Peyton Talbot. He's facing Ronnie Barcelos. Good fighter. Who do you got in that one?
Oh, I think Peyton Talbot, if he continues the rise that he's on, is like he's just like super interesting. He's like he comes from kind of like the internet generation. His YouTube channel is like super weird. It's like kind of like this skateboarder-esque like punk rock kind of weird. It's weird. It's
pretty weird. It's pretty weird. I like it, but it's weird.
But he has potential if he keeps going on the way that he's going to be a major star in the sport. He's super chill and easygoing. I've listened to a few interviews with him. I wish I could say more about Ronnie Barcelos. I think I'm pronouncing his name wrong, but for the sake of the argument, we'll call him Ronnie Barcelos.
Yeah.
I don't know much about him. I know he's been around for a while, but Peyton Talbot comes out like a bull in a china shop. So I'm gonna take Peyton Talbot, probably second round knockout.
Yeah, I'd say that's reasonable. Or for myself, I would say like maybe second round submission.
Perhaps, yeah.
Peyton Talbot has a great ground game as well. I'm looking at Ronnie Barcelos' Tapology right now. Man, he's been in the UFC since 2018. He's been in it for a while, and he actually has a unanimous decision win against Said Nurmagomedov.
Oh wow, yeah. Interesting. No, I just saw that now. Interesting.
Yeah. But he's been in the promotion for a good minute now.
Yeah. Wow. I think that's a really interesting fight. I think it's a great opportunity, especially in like the, like the preliminary card that could kind of be like the featured prelim.
Yeah.
And then just below that fight, I see that you got a heavyweight fight with Jailton Almeida and Sergey Spivak.
I know you're a Jailton Almeida guy. You like him.
I like him. I like him a lot. He's like his grappling is just you don't see a lot of like high level grapplers in the heavyweight division.
Mm-hmm.
that aren't named Tom Aspinall or John Jones.
Yeah.
But Jailton has this crazy ability to take mount and then turn that into a head and arm choke or a rear naked choke like almost seamlessly. He had a bit of a rough go with when he fought Derek. No, he was criticized for when he beat Derek Lewis for not finishing the fight, and then
he lost to Curtis Blades after.
He lost to Curtis Blades, yeah, and that was like 36 seconds of the second round. I mean, that's the thing with the heavyweights, though, man. It's like I remember watching Alexander Volkov versus what was his name? No, it was the Sergey Pavlovich, and I thought to myself, "Wow, this fight's going to end in the first minute," and it went to a 3-round decision. And it's just like very rarely do you see heavyweights go to a decision, in my opinion. It's just like I'm always expecting these guys to knock each other's heads off within the first 2.5 minutes. So it's really hard to tell, but I think Jailton Almeida is just one of those guys that like has a little bit of a setback, but will most likely probably get through Sergey Spivak, I think. And, be back in that like title picture with like another win after this. And yeah, I think that's where I'm looking at it.
Okay. Okay. All right. So let's start from like the main. Let's start from the main card. We're just gonna do some like quick picks. So
Yeah, absolutely.
Holland versus RDR.
Oh, it's hard. You know what? I'm just gonna go. I'm gonna take Kevin Holland, unanimous decision.
I'm gonna go with RDR second round submission.
Cool, cool.
Yeah. So Dariush versus Moicano.
You know, I always think Moicano's gonna fumble, but the way he just completely dismantled Benoit Saint Denis in France, I'm not gonna count him out. And I think, unfortunately, I like Beneil Dariush a lot. I think he's like one of the good guys in the sport, 100%. But I think Moicano's coming in with so much momentum, so I'm gonna take Moicano first round submission.
Whoa, first round submission. You know what? I feel like these two guys are too tough for their own good. I think it's gonna go Moicano split decision.
Sweet. And just for the record, I'm just gonna say now I think that's gonna win fight of the night.
Yeah, I think so too.
I could be wrong, but
these guys are gonna go for broke, and you know if it's as crazy as we think it is, who knows? They might meet each other again for a rematch.
Yeah, absolutely. And then finally, once, because when is Moicano and Paddy Pimblett going to fight each other? Are they just waiting? Are they waiting to like build that one up? Because I feel like that's just like that fight that needs to happen.
Yeah, that fight needs to happen.
They've been chirping each other for so long, and it's like I think when this fight card came out, and I showed you that it was Dariush versus Moicano, like it's never happening. Yeah. He's never going to fight Pimblett, but I mean that I think Pimblett versus Moicano would be like a perfect like in the UK headline 5-round fight. That would just be like the press conference would be so funny.
Yeah, it would be a banger card. I think that card might even be pay-per-view worthy.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
If they do it there, it would have to be like the co-main if John Jones and Tom Aspinall fight.
That'd be crazy,
right?
I have a feeling that John Jones would never go into enemy territory, but.
Hey man, I mean, there's only speculation and not confirmed. Like they changed the gloves for Bones, right? They changed back to the old gloves for him.
And
okay,
you know what?
So we got.
Let me just get the oil real quick, Ryan. Oh man.
So we got Prohaska versus Jamal.
Yeah, man. It's very rare that I'm like not sure about any, like truly not particularly clear on any of the fights on the main card, but man, I just think it comes down to fight IQ, and Yuri's just so crazy all the time. But man, he's like a bat out of hell. So I'm gonna take Yuri third round TKO.
Okay, I actually was thinking the exact same thing.
Oh really?
Nice. Yuri's so so unpredictable, and Jamal Hill, he's I'm not gonna say he's like your average MMA fighter because clearly he's not. He's a top ranked light heavyweight fighter, but I mean like Jamal Hill kind of like has like that like cookie cutter MMA style, right? Like I wouldn't. It's not like predictable, but like Yuri's just so unpredictable. You really don't know what you're gonna get from him, and I think that unpredictability will be hard for Jamal to be prepared for. So I got Yuri.
Sweet.
Yeah. So for the co-main for the bantamweight championship, we have the champion Merab Dvalishvili defending his title against Umar Nurmagomedov. Nurmagomedov.
Yeah. And what's funny is like that's probably one of the easier names to pronounce on this card.
I know.
Oh man. Yeah, there's that champion kind of like champion bias that you tend to think, and they always say when you become champion you almost get like 30% better. Merab is close to flawless, so I'm interested to see how he's improved since the O'Malley fight, but I'm going to go with Umar. I'm gonna Umar unanimous decision.
Umar unanimous decision.
Mhm.
Um, I'm gonna say Marab split.
Cool.
Marab
Sweet.
split just because like what in my mind I think it really is gonna come down to the war of attrition. Neither one of these guys I feel like are gonna be able to take down each other. Maybe like one of them will be able to get one. Maybe like or maybe both. Both will get one, but then the rest of it will be settled on the feet, and it's gonna be it's essentially gonna be a kickboxing match and a lot of clinch fighting, a lot of
Yeah.
clinch fighting, and it's gonna be a grueling pace too.
Yeah, it will be. Yeah, they'll be grinding it out for sure. It'll be like a really, really like I'll probably be tired watching the fight just because
Yeah,
it's just going to be such a high pace. I
yeah,
agree.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then of course we have the main event: Islam Makachev versus Armin Sarukian. Yeah, I did
Hey,
good on that one.
I think you're, I think like, it's like when you learn a new word, if you incorporate into your vocabulary like something like 8 times, it becomes more natural. I think you're like, getting it. I think you're getting the rhythm. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
Um, it's just too hard to bet against Islam, even though I watched their fight before and I know that they've improved in such a variety of ways since. But Islam is the pound for pound. He's just probably the most well-rounded guy in the sport right now. I mean, like he's just like there's not like an ounce of fat on that guy. Like he is shredded. He's always in shape. He's always training really hard. Uh, I would I think that like if they keep up that kind of pace that they had in their first fight, Islam it's kind of his fight to lose. But I don't want to say anything wrong about Armin. Armin's a fantastic fighter, and I think he has every opportunity to come in and take his title. And he's spoken in a variety of interviews that he doesn't see anything special against Islam. But
yeah, true.
I'm just going to go with Islam in a 4th round submission.
I was looking at Armin's resume on Tapology. He has no submission losses. He has two. He has one TKO loss and 2 decision losses, and I think Islam is gonna add a 3rd decision loss, and it's gonna be a
Yeah,
split. I think it's gonna be a split because it's another 50-50 fight on this
yeah,
card.
and like Islam has been taken into deep waters with Volk. He's had tough fights. He has shown that he can adapt, and his fight IQ can evolve in the moment. Yeah, and I think that after this, I think it's only fair that depending on what happens with the Bilal and Shavkat fight, that I'm assuming would happen maybe in May or June. I don't know, depending on the injuries and everything. If Shavkat does, in fact, beat Bilal, I think it's, Islam has entertained the idea of Volk coming up twice for double champ status. I think it's only fair that Islam gets a shot at his double champ status with the welterweight division because
Yep, I
I mean,
agree. I agree.
as big of a guy as he is, and while he cuts weight to get the lightweight, it's pretty obvious that Islam could more or less walks around higher than 170. So I think that I'd love to see what he could do at 170, and I'd love to see him challenge. I know that him and Bilal are tight and they're friends and they've trained together. So I don't know if that can happen, but depending on where the welterweight division goes, I would just love to see to Islam challenge for that double champ status for sure.
Me too. Me too. But it's gonna be no. It's not gonna be a walk in the park for him against Armin. It's not.
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
All right. So we pretty
Sweet.
much previewed the 311 card. I think we went a little bit over time, like with the
Yeah.
preview. We're just kind of like shooting the breeze, and this is our
Yeah.
first
Yeah.
episode. So for
Yeah.
anyone
Totally.
tuning in, please excuse, some of the technical challenges and difficulties.
Yeah.
We'll get right in a few episodes.
We're efforting. We're efforting. We're working it out. We're figuring out how to make this work. So
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
This is like this is the first step, and like we've never like had a podcast conversation with each other
Yeah. Yeah.
before, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
of course, like talking in this way is way different from being in the same room and being able to shoot the shit together, right?
Mhm.
But we had a few other topics that we wanted to discuss, and one of those was the PFL dissolving Bellator.
Yeah. It kind of sucks to hear that actually, but I think there was something that we anticipated
Hmm.
was going to happen regardless. I just didn't think it was going to happen so soon because what PFL acquired, or was it acquired, or was it like kind of an acquisition? Didn't
Yeah,
they?
yeah, yeah. It was an acquisition.
And I think we knew that it was slowly going to be dissolved, but I think that with guys like Corey Anderson and Patricio Pitbull, and some people have been treated really well at PFL and other people have not, and
Hmm.
I don't know about Don Davis you know as a figurehead with the organization, but I think it just kind of sucks because we need multiple organizations as like a definitive competition to UFC because the UFC are so far ahead. They've won the race, and
Hmm.
unless something catastrophic happens to their business plan,
Which I highly
uh,
doubt is going to happen.
which if they can avoid the class action lawsuit, they can avoid all these other things that have happened. Uh, Somehow the UFC always manages to win and come out on top, regardless, even when their cards fall apart. Um, they always seem to land on their feet. So
Hmm.
uh, I I just think that I'm looking forward to this GFL league that's coming out later on.
Yeah.
Again, early days. Interested to see where that goes and what comes of that. But it just sucks that like there's another in my opinion, like the Bellator brand has been around for such a long time, and the fact that it's no longer a thing, and then they released Pitbull, and I mean he should be in the UFC anyway, but yeah, it sucks.
Yeah, it does. And some of my favorite fighters were Bellator fighters like Eddie
Mm,
Alvarez, Michael
absolutely.
Chandler. I've over like maybe in a future episode we'll talk about this, but I've actually became good friends with Ryan Bader, who was their heavyweight and light heavyweight
Yeah,
champion.
yeah.
Um, Also, I actually connected recently with their early middleweight champion, and actually he was one of Bellator's first superstars, Hector Lombard. Him
Oh
and I
wow, yeah,
him and I connected recently, and he's a really cool person. Maybe we can have him on the pod one day.
that'd be cool. Yeah,
Yeah, it'd be really cool. He's a really interesting guy. But it's too bad that we don't have any more players because, like, I remember, back in the days when we had Pride, when we had WEC, when we had Strike Force, just having more options for the fighters to make money and to have
um,
opportunities is good and to build their brand before they go into the UFC. Like I look at some of the greatest fighters, before they became UFC champions, they were champions somewhere else. Like look at the Daniel Cormiers and the Luke Rockholds, and obviously
yeah,
Ronda Rousey made her name in Strikeforce beforehand, and
yeah.
all the countless fighters in Pride that made their name in that promotion before they came to the UFC as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Competition breeds like positive results.
Hmm.
There's a reason, like, and like yeah, I think that like it allows more fighters to come up, more like a potential of cross promotion. Though I don't think Dana White would ever want to do a cross promotion with any other
I
organization. But
mean,
you know what
like
I
to,
mean?
to be fair, like they're kind of loosely doing that with Ryzen,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
right? Because
Especially yeah.
how they're very particular about what kind of promotions and accomplishments that they mention on air. They're always like on the commentary they're pretty open about Ryzen champions, and it means something to be a
Mhm.
Ryzen champion.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Especially with
Kai Asakura.
Kaya Zakura
Yeah.
and Pantoja that fought just in December. That was they had personnel from Ryzen there, and they had a really good like kind of like sizzle reel for Azakura, and so I think that that's a really good partnership in terms of that. And um, yeah, we want to see more fights, and we want to see good fights, and I think that like the crumbling of Bellator, so to speak, is and yeah. I think I can't. I wish I could have a more nuanced take other than that. It sucks.
Yeah, yeah, me too, me too. And it just goes to show, like especially for MMA at the regional level, particularly in North America and in Europe, it's never been more important to make your name like on one of those promotions, especially since majority of the top regional promotions in the world, they're all aired on UFC Fight Pass,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And
That's a
like
great.
they all have deals on UFC Fight Pass, and it's just more incentive to make your name there while you can.
Yeah, and that's a great platform for more eyes to see some of those regional promotions, and whether that's Cage Warriors or as your background with the BFL, um, you're going to see some guys coming up and maybe get put onto Contender Series or the Ultimate Fighter, or
Yep.
maybe they'll just get a shot on one of the Apex cards just to start. And it's cool to follow those guys and have the opportunity to watch those guys prior to getting into like the Premier League, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Mhm.
Now, actually, this kind of ties in with Bellator dissolving. So we have two big free agents on the market now. We have Patricio Pitbull, who is a longtime Bellator champion and one of their big stars. He's a free agent now, and former UFC women's bantamweight champion Holly Holm. She's now a free agent.
Yeah, I think that the obvious choice is that Pitbull goes to the UFC, and I think that he can fight within featherweight and lightweight. So plenty of great matchups for him there. I think that's just the obvious choice. I think
Hmm.
that that's the choice that he likely not going to speak for him, but I can imagine that's where he's going to headed. He's going to be headed. I can't see why they wouldn't. He's got star power. He's got a great resume. There's no reason why the UFC shouldn't pick him up, and I think that he's
Long
worth the money.
overdue. Long overdue.
Long overdue. Long overdue. The Holly Holm stuff is really interesting because she obviously was kind of a pioneer in women's boxing prior to her MMA career. So
Hmm.
I think there were people. Who was it? I think like you could put her up against Katie Taylor. You could put her up against Amanda Serrano. You could put her up against Michaela Mayer. Um, yeah, I think women's boxing has gotten more and more interesting, and I think that helps with the likes of like guys like Jake Paul and them putting Amanda Serrano on, and you've got uh, Eddie Hearn like really championing Katie Taylor.
Yeah.
The Netflix card with uh, Jake Paul and Mike Tyson, and then having uh, Taylor Serrano 2 on there, like that was in my opinion my favorite fight of the year.
That was an excellent
Um,
fight. Beautiful fight.
and I think that I think that we've seen a couple guys go into the boxing realm from the UFC or kind of do those kind of crossover fights. But yeah, throw Holly Holm into one of those fights. Let her get paid.
Yeah, I agree. I was actually just going to
And,
mention that, which I guess kind of can segue into like, our next points as well. Um, Holly Holm, like, obviously she's a, women's boxing pioneer, and in many ways she's also a women's MMA pioneer as well. So like she's just an
absolutely.
all-around combat sports pioneer, but for sure there is money in a promotion like Misfits Boxing or Jake's Paul's promotion, Most Valuable Promotions, right?
Yeah,
There's
MVP, and then you can even look at like Matchroom with Eddie Hearn.
mhm.
There's plenty of options for her, and I think that really there's no bad options. I
Yeah.
think just and if she can get put onto like a card with maybe one of those Riyadh season cards or something like that,
Mhm.
or even like I said, even like the Misfits cards or anything like that. I think what I would love the most is for Holly Holm to get paid,
Me
and I
too. I
think that
agree. I agree. And like, from my prior experience working with Misfits and personally like, maybe there's a little bit of bias there, but I feel like in terms of the world of crossover boxing and crossover fights, Misfits does it right because their matchmaking is extremely excellent. Like they match up like the right people against each other at the right level. And then when it
Mhm.
comes to like those guys, like let's say like a Salt Poppy. You know Salt Poppy, right?
Yeah, yeah, oh, yeah.
Yeah, my good friend Salt Poppy. Like he's at a level where like, he can beat all the other influencers out there. And then when it comes time to fight like a guy that's a quote unquote real fighter, they test them. They test them and they
Yeah.
put him up against them. And like, that could 100% be something for Holly Holm. Like, maybe she can fight like a Misfits champion and like, they get lots of views and everyone there gets paid well and treated very fairly.
Yeah, that's awesome. And speaking of Misfits boxing, there's an interesting card happening this weekend, is there not?
Yeah, there is. It's being headlined by the one that we're particularly going to talk about because, like, there's only so much time in a day to watch all of these fights. But the one that I'm
Okay.
most interested in is a former UFC welterweight contender, Darren Till, fighting Anthony Taylor. Anthony Taylor is a very interesting fighter because before he got involved with the crossover stuff, big shout out to Anthony Taylor, really great guy.
Yeah.
He was actually a up and coming MMA fighter. He comes from the McKee camp.
Yeah.
That's the AJ McKee and shoot, man, his dad's name just slipped my mind. But like the McKee family in MMA, they're like an OG legendary family. And
Yeah.
Anthony Taylor comes from that camp, and he made his name in Bellator, and then he became a sparring partner for Jake Paul for boxing, and then he made his name there and started fighting in crossover. And like Anthony Taylor has been on this insane rise in the crossover scene, where like if he can beat Darren Till, he's long due for a big super fight with KSI.
Oh, I mean, I feel like that's just like such a, the fight that people want to see, but like whether it will happen, we don't know.
Yeah.
I don't follow the influencer boxing scene all that well. I know you have more a finger on the pulse on that kind of stuff, but I mean, but again, like we've spoken before, it's just like it's another outlet for fighters. It's another platform for fighters that are treated well and that has an incredibly large fan base. One that I'm constantly surprised at actually how big it is. So
Yeah.
forgive my ignorance if I'm just not as ear to the ground on that scene, but like it's a huge organization with a lot of fandom. And yeah, I mean, Darren Till versus Anthony Taylor, like I have no idea what to expect from a fight like that. I know that he was supposed to fight Tommy Fury.
Yeah.
Tommy Fury called the fight off because he thought that Darren Till was going to kick him in the fight, and I don't know. I think that's look. I wouldn't say anyone's ducking anybody. I wouldn't say anyone's scared of anybody. But excuses are excuses. But I don't know. I really don't know what to make of the Tommy Fury brand. He was on. What was he on? He was on like a reality TV show.
Yeah.
Some like Love Island or something. Love Island UK.
Yeah, something like that.
And he's and then he fought Jake Paul and he fought KSI and he handed them both significant losses, in my opinion. Like neither of those fights were particularly exciting, but he won those fights. And like I think that, and like like the Jake Paul and Tommy Fury saga was like on again, off again, on again, off again for a long time. So this is pretty standard practice for Tommy Fury to. So like hopefully Darren, if Darren were to win this fight in whatever way he does, or vice versa, Anthony Taylor does, the smart thing to do would be to call out Tommy Fury, either one of them, if they win.
Yeah, for sure. Like it just makes sense, or like depending on like how like the result, like whatever result come, like obviously for someone like Anthony Taylor, if he's able to like get the big W, like shoot your shot, go for like the biggest fish in the ocean, right?
Yeah,
go for the KSIs, call out the Jake Pauls, all that kind of stuff. Darren Till, like this is kind of redemption because his first outing in crossover boxing wasn't exactly his best outing ever. It didn't end well, and it's a shame too, because like sometimes like I look at Darren Till, and like obviously I don't know him personally, I've never worked with him or introduced him yet, but like I sometimes feel like he's wasted potential.
Absolutely, I think he's one of the big what ifs of the sport, and I don't know what his sights are on in the long term, but I think that it's good to get it's a good platform for him because he is a name, and I think that's what Misfits does well is they handpick, like you said, like the matchmaking is whether the fighters or not, or the backgrounds. There's definitely like a really thoughtful process of who they're putting on their cards.
Yeah, like it's all like evenly matched. Sorry, continue.
Yeah, and I think that this is a good thing for Darren because, there was a point in time where he was up for the welterweight title, and then he made the move to middleweight. He looked pretty good, and then just kind of just caught a couple bad losses, and I think he just wanted to step away and focus on some other things. He's a very talented Muay Thai fighter, so I'm curious to see like just kind of in with a full camp with like a full focus, what he's going to bring to the table this weekend. So I wish the best for him. I hope that this is the step in the right direction for his career, and hopefully he makes lots of money, regardless win or lose. But yeah, I think he is a bit of a what if in the sport, and
Yeah.
curious to see where he goes next. Yeah,
Yeah, me too. Me too. I'm gonna be tuning in for sure before UFC 311, and we just have like a few other things that we need to touch on as well.
yeah, sure.
Speaking of the Fury family, recently there was some news that came out that Tyson Fury is retiring, and as we both know in combat sports, whenever someone says that they're retiring, are they actually retired? Are they actually gonna leave the game?
Yeah. I just think I don't know. I think that in the wise words of promoter Eddie Hearn, if I was asked to fight Anthony, not sorry, not Anthony. Well, yeah, no, Anthony Joshua. Sorry, if I had to fight Anthony Joshua, yeah, I would probably retire too. I'd
Well,
be
well, I
I'd
mean,
be a little scared.
well, to be honest with you, like, I don't think Tyson Fury is scared of Anthony Joshua, and I don't think Anthony Joshua is scared of Tyson Fury. That's the
Absolutely
fight
not.
that we've always wanted to see. That's
It's
basically the king of the heavyweights, the king of the UK.
yeah.
If anything, like, if you think about it, even in a loss against Usyk, like Tyson Fury didn't look bad,
No,
right?
don't look bad at all. I think that Usyk just hit his stride really well in both fights, and I think that everyone's is entitled to retire if they wish, but if it could just be a negotiating tactic to make more money.
Basically, yeah.
Like Tyson Fury versus Anthony Joshua should happen in Wembley Stadium.
Hmm.
It should have happened 5 or 6 years ago.
Yep, it should have happened
Uh,
then. Yeah,
the,
yeah.
the issue with a lot of boxing fights is that we get them too late. A good example would be that of Floyd Mayweather versus Manny Pacquiao.
Hmm.
Probably the best example. I think that later this year, there's rumblings that we'll see Canelo versus Bud Crawford. But it's annoying because some of these guys, we want to see these guys in their prime, and sometimes that just doesn't happen. And I think that regardless of belts, Fury versus Joshua is like would just do huge numbers anyway. So
Hmm.
it doesn't need to have a belt. I think we just want to see those guys slug it out. And if this is a negotiation tactic from Fury, let it be a negotiation tactic because I don't fully believe that he's retired.
Yeah, me too. I'm with you on that. Like, I don't think, especially like in that second fight, I don't think his brand is hurt at all.
No, no,
I think like Tyson Fury has earned the right, obviously, to walk away from the sport whenever he likes. But
yeah,
retire. The word retirement is often used as a negotiating chip. The only guy that, like, obviously in history of combat sports, actually there's two guys that I can think of from the top of my head. Obviously Khabib, like,
mhm.
Khabib, like, he retired like while he was on top. Excellent move, great work, right? And he
Yeah,
never
yeah,
came back. And there's a legendary kickboxer named Masato. He literally left at the top of his game. Like,
mhm.
he retired, I believe it was on New Year's Eve 2009. He fought the legendary Dutch kickboxer Andy Sauer, and this was like for their big, Japanese NYE event. So this is like 65,000 people in the Tokyo
That's
Dome. It was a massive
yeah, that's
event,
crazy.
and Masato, like, he left while he was in his prime, and he never came back.
Yeah.
He never even
Like,
thought about it. He just walked away, and that was it.
yeah, and you know what? I think that this is a little bit of a cliche statement, but a lot of people in the combat sports industry, I think they always say that like the idea is to get in and out with the least amount of damage as possible, make as much money as you possibly can, and get out with your brain still intact. And both these guys, despite coming off of losses, are they're still pretty much there. I think that's always the sad thing when you see guys stick around the sport too long.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and like you said, Tyson Fury doesn't need to fight Anthony Joshua. He's probably got more money
I
than
don't,
he
e-
knows what
I
to
don't,
do
to
with.
be honest with you, I don't even think he's motivated by money. He has more than enough, and
No.
like, he's very strong in his like religious beliefs, and like it seems like he's gotten all of his vices out of the way.
Yeah,
So
which is
like
great. Yeah.
I think like I think he's all right. He's not motivated by money at all.
Hmm. And it's just the fight that everyone and every British boxing fan wants to see. Every fan on the planet wants to see. Anyone who follows boxing wants to see that fight, and it would do insane numbers. It would sell out Wembley Stadium, which is something like 92,000 people. I mean, if you watch the when Joshua fought Dubois, it was just like I just remember just like watching the broadcast, and just they cut to the stadium, and you're just like, I don't know how you could fit this many people into one building, but and it would just be a spectacle. And I think that's what we, at the end of the day, that's what fans want. They want a big show, and that is the fight to make, regardless. Anything can happen in the heavyweight division, but if there's one fight that I want to see this year in boxing, it's that.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I agree. And the last thing, I have two more things left on our agenda here. Um, that situation that Khabib had on the plane.
Yeah, I don't know. It kind of reminds me. You remember when Johnny Walker fought Magomed Ankalaev, and the referee asked Johnny Walker where he thought he was, and Johnny Walker said, "I'm in the desert," and that was enough of a reason for the referee to call the fight off. Which, to be honest, like, first of all, Johnny Walker's Brazilian, so English is not his first language, let alone speaking English to a that was in Abu Dhabi, that fight. So like, I don't know who the referee was at the time, but we don't know. Like, I think it's just, it's kind of one of those translator issues.
Yeah.
I read Khabib's tweet about it, and he said that, like, I think my English is pretty good. He ended up getting off the plane, waiting an hour and a half, getting back on a plane, going to his destination. He was like pretty respectful in the tweet about how, like, I just think that people should be more respectful and whatever. I don't think he did anything wrong. He was in the lane on the plane where, like, if you need to open the latch, like, that you're the guy that has to open the latch. Is that right? Because he was in that one part of the plane.
Yeah.
I think, and I don't think that whatever airline
It was like Frontier, so like it was like one of those budget airlines.
Yeah, it was like a budget airline that I think that, like, I don't think they knew who he was anyway. So it's not like they were trying to make a gotcha moment with him.
Yeah.
It is kind of funny that apparently, like, the next day, Conor McGregor, like, followed that airline on Instagram. Just like the pettiness continues, and it's. I mean, we'll talk. I'm sure we'll talk about Conor in another episode, but
where do we begin?
don't know, and I truly don't know. But yeah, I think it's a little bit blown out of proportion, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's something that, quote unquote, needs to be reported on.
I mean, like, to be honest with you, I think like the biggest like takeaway from that whole incident is that he was flying on a budget airline.
Just like what you want? I've heard I've heard about people say that, like, the cost of living in Dagestan and Russia alone is not like the Western United States. So I think that those guys, like, despite I don't know how much money they have, that's not important, but I think those guys all live quite modestly regardless. I don't think that they care too much for the extravagance.
Yeah. So like, for Frontier Airline, it's like, it's whatever. It's like it's a point A to point B.
Yeah, it's like,
right?
Like, I don't need to fly private. I don't need to be first class. I just need to get to my location and corner my guys and come home. Like, I think those guys live very, I wouldn't say like frugal lives. I just think that, like, they're realistic people in the terms of, like, they use the money that they make to put into their community and bring up new generations of fighters. And the fact that he was on a budget airline is, like, honestly, when you have that kind of money, like, the reason why Khabib probably still has a crap load of money is because he doesn't spend a lot of it. So
and like on top of that, like like you were saying before, like they're using that to build their communities and to build the next generation of fighters. So it's like almost like a cheat code for infinite wealth. Just keep making more Dagestani wrestlers.
Honestly, like, yeah, I don't see it. I don't know when the Dagestani, guys are gonna be toppled. I just feel like they're just so dominant right now, and yeah, who knows?
Yeah, yeah. So the last thing I wanted to touch on next week, we have a great card out here in Vancouver, BC. It's Battlefield Fight League 82. For
Ooh.
those that are listening in and they don't know about the Battlefield Fight League, sorry, I'm just on my browser typing up the Battlefield website. The Battlefield Fight League is one of the premier promotions in Canada that puts a lot of talent into the UFC. We have let me look at let me look at this here. Like we have a section where we have all the different alumni from the BFL. So we have 9 fighters that graduated from the BFL. I'm looking at the roster right now. I've introduced everyone on this roster except for Michael Chiesa. Michael Chiesa was
Oh, wow.
was a part of the BFL way before, not way before my time, like a few years before I became the announcer for the BFL. But we have such great talents. We had Jeremy Kennedy, former one heavyweight champion Arjun Buller. We had former UFC fighter Matt Dwyer. Surrey City, he's from Ontario. He's on the come up. Jamie Lynn Horth, my coach and teammate Kyle Machado. He's based out in Brazil now. Cole Smith, excellent fighter as well. And Ryan James. Ryan James, like he had a bit of a cup of tea in the UFC, but he was a great Battlefield champion. But going back to the card, the BFL is an excellent promotion. The top guys within the Pacific Northwest and throughout all of Canada, they use the BFL as a platform to make their name. We're essentially, I can't remember what quote I read. I think actually it was Michael Chiesa that said it. He said essentially the BFL is the Cage Warriors of Canada.
No, and I totally agree. I think it's it's a great, I wouldn't say feeder league, but I guess that's like a kind of a blasé way of saying it, but it's a little bit like of a league like that, like you said, it's on UFC Fight Pass, so you can always catch it. It's easy access to catch these fights, see who's coming up. I've seen a few of these guys that are competing next week, and yeah, like it's very exciting fights. Maybe for all you know, some of these guys that you see on the broadcast next week might be big stars in down the road. So yeah,
If I can touch on one thing quickly, the main event, like this card in general, I'm saying this without being biased because like I'm the ring announcer. This card is very stacked. Like to open up the card, we have super welterweight champion Dan Kayach. He's defending his title against a top prospect from Montreal. His name's Danny Millette. He's one of the top guys from Montreal. I believe he fought in the Samurai promotion, which is like their big promotion out in Quebec.
cool.
And they're opening up the card with that. They're opening up the card with a title fight, and that's never been done before. Dan Kayach, he for a long time, he's been one of the best kept secrets in Canada. Like his record of 17-8-2 doesn't tell the full story, but on a technical level, on a martial arts level, like I've some of the craziest moments of my career witnessing in person, it's been his fights.
Yeah.
He's so I'm looking forward to seeing that. But the main event, I think the one that the Sean Shelbys and the big timers in the UFC, the ones that they're really watching is Radley De Silva versus Drew Brokenshire. So Radley De Silva, for those that are tuning in right now, he is the BFL featherweight champion. And last year he scored one of the knockouts of the year in the sport, where it was this beautiful spinning back kick. It just took down his opponent.
Outrageous.
Yeah, it was the talk of the entire MMA world. It has millions of views online, and the craziest part about it is Radley De Silva. His family, he's part of a family of capoeira masters. They're called I believe his camp is called Ache Capoeira. They brought the art of capoeira to Canada, and his cousin, man, his name escapes me. I feel really bad, but like everyone, I know you've all seen it. It's on YouTube. His cousin scored the first big capoeira knockout in MMA, and like basically it's like a family of killers, and they all have these like insane knockouts.
Yeah, and honestly, Ben, like I saw him fight when he won the featherweight title. I think was that when he fought. When was I there?
Let's look back. That was against Maxime Soucy.
Thank you.
BFL 79.
Yeah.
Maxime Soucy is absolutely no slouch. He was actually Maxime Soucy was supposed to be the next guy that the UFC was looking at actually, because he comes from like Montreal. He comes from Quebec, and like
Yeah.
as you know, like the rich history that the TriStar Gym has in Canadian MMA, like that's automatically like a magnet and a target that people look out for. And the UFC was
Absolutely.
very interested in Maxime Soucy and De Silva, for a lack of a better word, essentially derailed that train.
Yeah, and I think that after watching that, that spinning wheel kick knockout that he scored in September. I'm looking at his Tapology right now. It's like if you didn't know about this guy, now you do. And I think that like if you can watch like if you can tune into his fight against Drew Bruckenshire at BFL 82, I think that you won't be disappointed. I think that he could potentially be one of the next guys. Whether you might see him on Contender Series or Tough, or even maybe he'll just get the call up right away. So
Yeah,
it's super exciting to see a local guy like that. Go viral over that knockout. So
yeah,
absolutely.
it's a beautiful thing to see. It's a beautiful thing to see, and like the Silva family. I believe Radley's dad was a BFL featherweight champion himself,
No, wow.
actually, and he's fought the likes of Jeremy Kennedy, and his brother also fought as well. So like I've introduced a big chunk of Radley's family. Just to give you guys a little bit of a background on Drew Brokenshire. So Drew Brokenshire is someone that I've been familiar with for many years. He was actually a longtime staple of the Pacific Northwest MMA scene. He comes from the great state of Washington, comes from Tacoma. He was actually on the UFC's radar at one point in time as well. Just like over the years, he's a veteran of the game, and he has some like tough losses and everything like that. But Drew is no slouch either, and like he's been a mainstay of Pacific Northwestern MMA for a long time, and this is no easy feat. But for sure, if Radley De Silva can defend his title and be successful against a veteran like Drew, I'm pretty sure the UFC is going to be coming knocking on the door. Like I think like probably it'll most likely be Contender Series, but I think someone like Radley, if he can get like if he can get another big viral KO, I think like he could get like he can like open up a main card. Not
Oh
not
yeah.
not not, not a main card. Sorry, he can open up like a card.
Yeah,
A card.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Sky's the limit for him. And I think if you're looking for something to do next Saturday, you could watch Misfits in the morning. Wait, no, that's
Yep.
this weekend. Sorry, no, I'm lying. Next weekend, yeah. If you're not doing anything, I highly recommend checking out the BFL card on UFC Fight Pass.
Yep. I highly recommend it. So yeah, this was our first episode. I think we went a little bit over time, and that's something that
Yeah,
we have to work on as
yeah,
co-hosts,
absolutely.
right? And eventually we're gonna have some interesting guests. We'll get a few episodes out of the way, become more comfortable, like talking to
Yeah,
each other in this way,
absolutely. Yeah,
right?
no, it's fun, man. It's just hey, you know what? We're just gonna put it out there and see what happens. And
Okay, so
we like
so
talking about fights, and yeah,
yeah, exactly, man. And like I'm so glad that we got this finally out of the way, just because
yeah,
this has
absolutely.
been years in the making for us to talk about doing this kind of show. It's funny though, man. Like I have lots of people that message me and talk to me about fights, but out of all the people I know, you actually talk to me the most about fights.
Hey, it
Yeah.
just it's just like something that I enjoy, and it's always nice to actually talk to someone who's in invested and involved in the community, and who trains, and it's just just cool to just like talk shop about it. Yeah.
So for those that are listening, where could they find you on social media?
Oh, well, I'm just at Aaron Paul Stewart on Instagram. I don't use Twitter too much anymore, but yeah, mainly Instagram, and yeah.
Cool. For those that are tuning in or listening in, I'm a very easy guy to find. On all of my major social media platforms, it's Ryan Ventura 604. Except for on X, I changed the 604 to 778.
There you go.
Maybe I could tell you guys a story one day of why I had to change that too. But
Yeah.
yeah, I
To be
got
continued.
yeah, to be continued. There's a lot of stuff going on. So we got UFC 311 going down this weekend, Misfits Boxing going down, and of course, if you want to watch some live fights, if you're in the Vancouver area, the best of Canadian MMA, you can find me at BFL 82 live from the Harbor Event and Convention Center. Tickets are available now at battlefieldfl.com. I'm your host, Ryan Ventura, and my co-host,
Aaron Paul Stewart.
And, I hope you enjoyed this. We'll see you on the next episode.
Sweet.
Take care.
All right, take care.